My parents paid my sister but refused to pay me, telling me you're on your own. I built a fortune in secret, and when they begged me to bail her out of debt, I handed them a fake check. Oops, just like you did to me. I smiled as they realized it was worthless. I was 17 when I first realized the truth. My parents didn't see me as their child. I was a burden, an afterthought, someone to be tolerated but never invested in. Meanwhile, my sister, Claire, was their golden child, the princess who could do no wrong. They paid for her private school, her piano lessons, her dream college. When she wanted a car, they bought her one. A lavish graduation trip to Europe? Of course. And me? I asked for a little help with tuition. Not even a full ride, just some support. But my father scoffed. My mother had pursed her lips. You're on your own, kid. No discussion. No hesitation. Just a decree from the people who were supposed to love me. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just nodded. Then I walked away. And I started planning. I worked 3 jobs. Bartending at night. Running deliveries in the morning. And on weekends? I cleaned offices, mopping floors while Claire lived her cushy life. She calls sometimes, laughing about her new designer bag. Or the weekend trips with her friends. You should really loosen up, she'd tease. It's not that hard to enjoy life, you know. Enjoy life? I barely had time to sleep. But I kept going. Grinding. Saving. Investing every penny wisely. I devoured finance books, watched market trends, and by the time I was 25, I was worth millions. Not that anyone knew. My parents still thought I was barely scraping by, struggling just like they had planned. They never asked how I was doing, never checked in unless they needed something. And I never offered a single detail about my success. Let them think I was nothing. It was better that way. Then Claire's perfect world started to crack. First, it was little things, missed credit card payments, her expensive lifestyle catching up. Then came the real disaster. A business venture gone wrong. She'd invested in some shady scheme, trusting the wrong people, and now she owed hundreds of thousands. Her calls became frantic. And when my parents finally reached out, I wasn't surprised. Sweetheart, we need your help, my mother said, her voice dripping with forced warmth. Your sister is in a little financial trouble. I leaned back in my chair, smirking. Here it is. The moment they realize they need me. Why don't you help her? I asked casually. My father sighed. We did. We gave her everything we could. But she needs more. We know you've been working hard. Working hard? That was the best they could do. So, you want me to bail her out? I clarified, my voice dangerously calm. My mother hesitated. She's family. Family. That word had never felt more meaningless. I should have just said no. Should have laughed in their faces and walked away. But I had a better idea. And so, with a smile, I told them exactly what they wanted to hear. Of course. I'll help. I wrote the check myself. Made it look real, every detail perfect. A lifeline for Claire, signed and sealed. When I handed it over, my parents nearly wept with relief. Claire clung to me, whispering, thank you, as if I was her hero. I let them bask in their victory for a few moments longer. Then I tilted my head, grinning. Oh, by the way, I said, voice laced with mock sympathy. The check's worthless. Silence. What? Claire laughed weakly. I shrugged. Oops, just like you did to me. Their faces shifted. Realization hit. The check was as empty as their promises had been to me. And as my father's hands clenched, my mother's mouth fell open in horror, and Claire's world crashed around her. I smiled. Because for the first time, they finally knew what it felt like. For a long, agonizing second, nobody moved. The check trembled in my father's grip. My mother's breathing turned shallow, her knuckles white as she clutched Claire's arm. And Claire? She stared at me, blinking rapidly, as if the right amount of disbelief could somehow change reality. Then the storm broke. You're joking. Claire's voice was brittle, her fingers tightening around the worthless piece of paper. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Try cashing it. Her hand shook as she flipped the check over, eyes darting across the numbers, the signature. No, this is real, she insisted, but her voice was laced with something dangerous now. Doubt. I tilted my head, watching her unravel. Is it? That was all it took. She lunged. Not to hit me. Claire had never been the physical type. No, she clawed at my shirt, eyes wild, voice rising in pure, unfiltered panic. Why would you do this? My father slammed his fist on the table. Enough. His voice cracked, but there was no power behind it. Claire stumbled back, panting. I smoothed out my shirt, unbothered. That's funny, I said, glancing between them. I was going to ask you the same thing. My mother reached for me, her expression pleading. Sweetheart, this isn't the same. I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Really? Because I remember asking for help once. And what did you say? I leaned in, dropping my voice to a near whisper. You're on your own, kid. Silence. It stretched long and thick between us, suffocating. My father exhaled through his nose, nostrils flaring. That was different. Of course it was. I gestured around dramatically. Because now it's Claire, and suddenly, family means something again. Claire's eyes darted between our parents, her desperation mounting. Mom? Dad? She swallowed hard. Tell me you have something left. My mother flinched. My father rubbed a hand over his jaw, the weight of years pressing down on him. They had nothing. Every last favor, every dollar, had been spent on Claire already. She was their final bet, and they had lost. Claire let out a small, strangled sound. Then, like clockwork, the anger returned. You think you're better than me? She spat, stepping closer. Just because you got lucky? I scoffed. Lucky? Do you even hear yourself? I asked, my voice dangerously even. You blew through everything they gave you. Everything. You could have had a future, but you chose to live like nothing would ever catch up to you. Her lips pressed into a thin line. And you think you're so righteous? Sitting on a pile of money while your family suffers? Family, I echoed. Since when? She recoiled. And for the first time I saw it, guilt. Just a flicker. A crack in her entitled, delusional world. But she buried it fast. Too fast. You're disgusting, she hissed. Money changes people, and clearly, you're no better than the rest of them. I laughed, slow and deliberate. Oh, Claire, money didn't change me. I stepped forward until we were inches apart. It changed you. She faltered. I turned to my parents. And you, I added, my voice dripping with mock pity. You made your choice years ago. You gambled everything on her, and now you're paying the price. My mother's lip trembled. We didn't mean to, don't. My voice was sharp now. Tired. Don't rewrite history just because it's convenient. I sighed, stepping back. You had a good run, Claire. But it's over. Figure it out. Her face twisted. You don't mean that. I said nothing. Because I absolutely did. I walked out without looking back. The night air was cool as I stepped onto the street, leaving behind the chaos I had once called home. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You think this is over? You owe me. I'll make sure you regret this. I smirked. Oh, Claire, you have no idea who you're up against. I stared at the message on my phone, the glow of the screen illuminating my smirk. Claire was desperate, and desperation made people reckless. I should have blocked the number, ignored her, moved on. But instead, I slid my phone into my pocket and took a slow breath. Because I knew Claire. She wasn't bluffing. She was planning something. And whatever it was, I'd be ready. Days passed, then weeks. Nothing happened. I almost started to believe that maybe, just maybe, Claire had finally accepted reality. That she'd hit rock bottom and would start clawing her way out on her own. Then my bank account was flagged for fraud. It was a minor inconvenience. One call, and it was cleared. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was who had tried to access it. Claire. I checked the digital logs, my jaw tightening. She'd used our mother's name to make the request. Unbelievable. I paced my office, phone in hand, debating my next move. Could I press charges? Absolutely. Should I? Not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd go. And I got my answer the next morning. When I walked into my office, a secretary looked up, hesitating. Sir, there's someone waiting for you. I already knew. I sighed and stepped inside. Claire sat in my chair, legs crossed, wearing the same smug expression she always had when she was getting away with something. You broke in, I said flatly. She grinned. Relax. I convinced your assistant I was just an old friend. I leaned against the desk, arms crossed. What do you want, Claire? She tilted her head. You already know. I exhaled sharply. I'm not giving you a cent. She pouted. Even after everything we've been through. I barked out a laugh. You mean the part where you tried to steal from me? Her smirk didn't falter. Come on. You can't blame a girl for trying. I stared at her, the weight of years pressing down on me. The lies, the manipulation, the sheer arrogance that had been handed to her since birth. Claire had never been told no before, but I wasn't the same person she used to push around. I pushed off the desk and stepped closer, dropping my voice. Listen carefully, Claire. This game you're playing? You already lost. Her smirk wavered. I leaned in. Try something like this again, and I'll make sure you regret it. Something flickered behind her eyes. Fear. But just like always, she buried it beneath that mask of confidence. She stood, brushing imaginary dust off her dress. Fine. Have it your way. And she strolled past me, pausing only at the door. This isn't over, she murmured. You'll see. And just like that, she was gone. I let out a slow breath, running a hand through my hair. Claire wasn't backing down. That much was clear. And if there was one thing I'd learned about my sister, it was that when she couldn't charm her way out of a problem, she got dangerous. I had no idea what she was planning next, but I wasn't going to wait to find out. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. A gruff voice answered on the first ring. Long time, a man said. Yeah, I exhaled. I need a favor. A pause. Then name it. I glanced at the door Claire had just walked through, my jaw tightening. Find out exactly what she's up to. The man on the other end of the line chuckled. Still cleaning up your sister's messes, huh? I smirked, rubbing my temple. Not this time. This time, I'm making sure she can't pull another one. A pause. Then, I'll look into it. You'll hear from me soon. I hung up and exhaled. This ends now. 3 days passed before I got the call. She's desperate, my contact said, and she's making mistakes. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Tell me everything. She's been trying to get a loan. Big one. But no one's biting. A dry chuckle. Words out that she's a financial disaster. That was good. It meant fewer people for her to manipulate. But it also meant she'd start looking for other ways to get what she wanted. I drummed my fingers against my desk. What else? A pause. Then, she's been talking to someone shady. I sat up. Define shady. The kind of guy who doesn't ask questions as long as the price is right. He sighed. I don't know what she's offering, but whatever it is, she's betting everything on it. Damn it, Claire. This wasn't just reckless. This was dangerous. And if she was willing to go this far, I had to be one step ahead. That night, I got a text from my mother. Dinner at home. Just us. Please come. I stared at the screen, debating. My first instinct was to ignore it. Walk away like I should have done years ago. But something didn't sit right. So, against my better judgment, I went. The house looked the same. A little more worn, a little emptier, but still the same suffocating place I had walked away from years ago. My parents were already at the table when I arrived. And so was Claire. I sighed, rubbing my jaw. Should have known. My mother gave me a tight smile. Sit down, sweetheart. I didn't. Why am I here? Claire leaned back, swirling a glass of wine in her hand. Because we're family. And family helps each other. I barked out a laugh. Yeah? Pretty sure you weren't thinking about family when you tried to access my account. Claire didn't flinch. Of course, she didn't. Instead, she placed her glass down and folded her hands neatly. Fine, she said smoothly. Let's cut to the chase. She looked me dead in the eye. I know about the money. Silence. My jaw tightened. She smirked. I did some digging, and you know what I found? You're richer than you let on. My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. So that was it. This wasn't dinner. It was an ambush. Claire leaned in. You think you're so smart, don't you? Her voice was almost playful. Hiding all that money, pretending to be struggling just like the rest of us. She tilted her head. But see, I have proof now. My stomach coiled. Not in fear. In fury. Claire wasn't just pushing her luck anymore. She was going to war. And I wasn't about to lose. I exhaled slowly, forcing a smile. You really think you can blackmail me? She blinked. I laughed softly, shaking my head. You don't have a clue who you're messing with. Her smirk faltered. I leaned forward. Let me guess. You're working with that shady guy you were meeting, right? Thought you'd pull some information and shake me down. She stiffened. Just barely. But I caught it. Bingo. I sighed dramatically, standing up. Claire, Claire, Claire. You really should have been more careful. She glared. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. Then, I turned it toward her. A recording played. Her voice. Talking about her schemes. About her debts. About her little blackmail plan. Her face was drained of color. See? Claire, I pocketed my phone. I already knew you were up to something. I shrugged. So, I made sure to be ahead of you. Just like always. Her breath hitched. My mother gasped. My father's hands curled into fists. And me? I just smiled. Because this game was over. Claire's face was priceless. Shock, rage, panic, all flickering across her features in rapid succession. She looked at our parents, but they were just as stunned. She had no backup, no escape, and she knew it. I leaned back, tapping my fingers against the table. So, I said, voice calm. You were saying? Her hands curled into fists. You set me up. I laughed. Oh no, Claire. You set yourself up. I gestured to my phone. All I did was make sure there was proof. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. You think this is funny? I tilted my head. A little, yeah. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She was losing control. Good. Because for years, Claire had played the victim, twisting reality to make herself the center of the universe. She had lied, manipulated, taken everything from everyone around her. But now, she had nothing left to take. She turned to our parents. You just gonna let him do this? My father remained stone-faced. My mother still wouldn't look at me. But there was something in her posture, something weary. Maybe, finally, she saw Claire for what she was. Or maybe she just realized she had backed the wrong horse. Claire scoffed. Wow, unbelievable. After everything, you're all just going to abandon me. Abandon her? I stood, leveling her with a cold stare. You abandoned yourself a long time ago. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because she knew it was true. She had every opportunity, every chance to turn her life around. And instead, she kept doubling down on the same selfish, destructive choices. This wasn't something I did to her. This was something she did to herself. She turned toward the door, but before she could storm out, I spoke one last time. Claire. She froze. I'll be careful about who you try to screw over next, I said evenly. Because some people, they won't be as nice as me. She stiffened, and then she left. I watched her go, knowing I'd probably never see her again. And I was okay with that. I turned to my parents. They looked tired, defeated. For the first time in their lives, they couldn't fix Claire's mess. Because Claire was the mess. I slid my phone back into my pocket. Guess this is it. I said, heading for the door. My mother finally spoke. Wait. I stopped. She hesitated. I. I already knew what she wanted to say. Some half-hearted attempt at an apology. Some excuse about how they never meant to push me aside. But it was too late. I gave her a small, sad smile. Take care, Mom. Then I walked out. A week later, I got a call from my contact. Your sister, he said. She tried to pull another scam. Didn't work out. I wasn't surprised. What happened? He sighed. Let's just say she finally pissed off the wrong people. I didn't ask for details. I just nodded, hanging up the phone. Claire had made her choice, and I had made mine. I sat back, looking out over the city skyline. For the first time in my life, I was free. Free from their expectations. Free from their betrayal. Free to live a life that was mine. And I wasn't looking back. Not ever again.